Okay, perfect. So, first of all, thank you very much for joining. This is the first time that I have the opportunity to participate in this event. I am super fans over this event, and I really feel excited to be here right now. So thank you very much for joining. As Sierra mentioned, I've been working in this field for a couple of years now, mostly in the digital area for more than 7 years, but participating specifically in the community with disabilities for more than 15 years. And let me tell you this story, um, just giving some hints about it. Well, when I was 16 years old, I usually love to sit down at the first row at the bus going to the high school. Probably now it could be kind of weird, but at that time I really like it. So one day, suddenly, one young woman carrying a baby stood up in front of the door of the bus. She was using her hands to talk with us. I was completely shocked. I didn't know anything what just happened. Neither the bus driver and none of the other passengers of the bus didn't know how to help her. I just went really frustrated, and I decided to stood up just on the seats and try to yell, try to use my hands, try to use just gestures, and try to say something in order to help her. I was super frustrated about it, and the reaction of the bus driver changed my life completely. A couple of seconds after I start talking with her or trying to talk with her at that time, the bus driver closed the door in her face. I just remember I just remember her standing up in front of the door for a couple of seconds just carrying her baby. And I remember myself feeling devastated and just sat down and crying and start crying the entire road to the high school. Just thinking about what just happened, why I couldn't do anything. So this point forward, I decided to start getting involved with accessibility and disability at that time. 15 years later, when I was practicing my sign language because I felt in love with the deaf community, I was invited to a cafeteria in San Jose downtown here in Costa Rica. I'm from Costa Rica, and I had the opportunity to talk with a group of persons that were there at that cafeteria. Suddenly, one woman just came to me and started talking, and we were talking about many things, and she was wondering why was my interest into the deaf community if I don't have any hearing disability or family members with hearing disability. Just I shared the same story that I shared with you. She started crying because she remembered me just standing up in that seat, try to do something for her. 15 years later, I met that girl, Maria Alexandra, and now she's my friend. And she gave me a great gift. In the deaf community, usually we have a sign for our names, and she gave me my name, and this name is recognized by the deaf community here in Costa Rica. So at that point, I completely understood that thinking about accessibility and mostly disability is one of the greatest wins of the market. So I would like to make a question. Have you ever felt left out? Think about it. I felt left out many times, and I would like to be vulnerable a little bit more. I usually, one of my biggest fears is my accent. I have a strong accent, and sometimes when I feel scared, you can notice more that accent. And sometimes I being rejected just because I look like or because my accent, and it's really bad, right? That feeling is horrible. But how can we do to understand this, and how can we change it? And how is this important for business and for us as a content creators, as a developers, as a testers, as a designers, as a leaders? This specific feeling that we already talked about, exclusion, it's horrible. Usually when we are used to different kind of things, we consider this as normal, and we are not thinking about different environments, we are not thinking about different opinions or different perspectives, and we don't understand what is happening when we need to have some conversations with people with disabilities. And exclusion and segregation, it's a specific it's a, are some specific behaviors and specific concepts that we need to know in order to start avoiding this. So usually when we think that the all the things that we are doing are normal, we are in trouble. So let's talk a little bit more about some of the things. Let's make an exercise. How do you feel seeing those images? You can just write down in the comments your thoughts. I will give you like 5 seconds per each image, okay? First image. What do you think? And let me give you just one video that I think it will be really important.
The faces you see in your day-to-day life ultimately define your perspective on what's normal.
What you're frequently seeing is this idea of disabled as lesser, disabled as something that needs to be fixed. I don't need to be fixed from what I am. I just want to be included. And I think that we all do.
People with disabilities make up about 20% of the population, but only 2% of our media. Let's change that.
Okay, let's go.
Verizon, the disability community, and Getty Images are creating a new photo collection that more accurately reflects the lives and diversity of people with disabilities.
That's great.
We can do anything, and it requires the media to help get that message out.
Let's change how the world sees disability.
Thank you.
Get started at thedisabilitycollection.com.
Okay. So I really love this type of messages, right? Because we are creating a type of conscious about this. And did you know that only 2% of the images that we can find in internet are representing real people with disabilities? Only 2%. That's catastrophic. That number needs to change. So that's why we are here, just to learn a little bit about. Let me just include a couple of more concepts that will be really important for us. Inclusive economy. And you probably said, inclusive economy? What is the relationship with this talk? We have many things to explain in here. When we are talking about a specific inclusive economy, we are talking about equality. Doesn't matter your background, your gender, your color, your disability, your technology savviness, your age. The idea of an inclusive economy is avoid completely exclusion and promotes equality. So, if we are part of the content creators, designers, developers, leaders that are trying to create a better world, Can we think about this concept? Definitely. We need to take care about people, and it's our responsibility because accessibility is a human right. Okay? We can talk a little bit more about this. But when we started with accessibility, we need to know what disability means. If we are not clear about this concept, we cannot start with accessibility because disability it's a complex content, a complex definition, sorry. And we need to understand what is the meaning and what is the most common situations that people with disabilities suffers when we are working with digital products, when we are creating digital products. So accessibility is a complex term, I know, but definitely involves the opportunity to understand that people have different types of situations, and also some body functional situations or problems, or some mental illness, cognitive disabilities, mobility impairments. And yes, it needs to be with human beings. But one of the most important content that we need to understand in here is that usually everything that we know is created for people without disabilities. And usually the society and everything that we create can promote inaccessibility and can be a specific critical, or can be critical for people who wants to be who wants to have different job opportunities, or have an education, or have a different life, because we are not promoting accessibility in everything that we are creating. So that's why it's important to understand the disability and understand that everything that we are creating can affect the specific accessibility for many users. One of the other terms that I would like to share with you is the ableism. I don't know if you had the opportunity before to listen about this, but this is really common, and sometimes we don't know that we are part of this specific behavior. Actually, when we are talking about ableism, it's when we say, "Oh, I need to make this content accessible. Ugh, I'm just tired. I don't want to do it. It's just so complicated." We are just promoting microaggressions. And in this case, we need to understand that people with disabilities, we are the same. We just are seeing the things with a different perspective. So that's why it's important to understand all these things to make us a better professionals. So that's why I had this information for you today. Now, I would like to make you a personal question. You don't need to answer, but you can think about it. What do you think about disabilities? What is your personal opinion about disabilities? Because, as I said, we need to understand what is the concept of disabilities, but mostly, what do I think, or what do I need to understand about disabilities? Usually, when we are talking about disabilities, we usually associate disabilities to perceptions, to bias, to many of assumptions, and we thought about many things. And for example, let me give you some examples that I usually hear here in Costa Rica. For example, people that says, "Oh, can I pray for you?" Because they think that disability is a sin, right? Or for example, people that says, "No, no, no, people with disabilities is not my business. Let the government or other institutions to be in charge of this. It's not my business. I don't want to think about that." And in business, think about this. What is the culture around of disability and accessibility in my team? Why do as a leader in terms of teach about accessibility, inclusion, diversity in my team? That is really important. And what is my communication with my stakeholders, with my clients? Are we aligned in the terms of the concept that I have in terms of accessibility? So, sorry. Let me share with you a couple of important situations in here. When we need to think about disabilities, I would like to share with you like a high level classification of disabilities. The first one, it's the one related with permanent disabilities. most of the time we can see these disabilities. We can think about a person in a wheelchair, right? A deaf user or a blind user, or some people with a speech impairments. We can definitely notice that. And this is the classification of a disability as a permanent. Then we have the temporary disabilities, and in this case, it could be an accident. We can be practicing on a specific sport, or we can just work out and just have an injury, and we cannot walk, or we cannot use our arms, we cannot write or read properly because we have some vision problems because an illness, right? So this is temporary, and probably for a couple of months or a couple of days we will not able just to make the things that we usually do, right? So this is one of the classifications of disabilities. Then we have the situational, and the situational is kind of interesting because it is not related with a physical disability or cognitive disability or a specific um, situation in terms of disabilities. Is mostly the environment. One of the stories that I usually like to share is I love Korea. I love the language. I am in love of this culture since I was 11 years old because my father, and I try to learn everything about it. And one of my dreams is go and visit Korea and try to just speak my weak Korean with another person that is native. Probably my pronunciation right now with the little Korean that I have with other natives can be cause kind of troubles, right? And probably miscommunication. But this could be a situational disability, and it's not related with anything with my brain or with physical disabilities. Then we have invisible disabilities, and I bet that everyone present in this talk has been part of this specific disability. We can have stress, we can have a high cognitive load, we have chronic diseases or chronic pain or burned out syndromes because we are tired, because we are doing too many things. And definitely we are being part of disability. And let me tell you something, disability will be part of our lives all the time in many situations. We need to live with disabilities, and we don't need to wait until we have 60 years old or 70 years old to think about disabilities or to think about accessibility, right? We need to think about this today, okay? By saying all of the things that I already mentioned, how can we just start incorporating this into the technical aspects? One of the important things is that everything related to the types of disabilities, the concept of disability that we already know and learn today, it's classified in six main categories. We have visual disabilities, hearing and auditory disabilities, mobility and dexterity disabilities, speech impairments, cognitive disabilities being one of the most common in internet, and also seizures disorders. Everything related to flashing, hypersensitivity to the lights, etc. Okay, so what would be the specific best practice, or how can we define the status quo? Usually, I'm working as a consultant in terms of accessibility, and sometimes when I need to work with managers or technical leads, and there is mandatory to incorporate accessibility as part of the project, they usually make this question. Do you know how much is the percentage of people with disabilities who will access the site? My mind and my heart broke all the time because this is really bad. We already mentioned about exclusion, about segmentation, and sometimes we are promoting this because we really don't know some of the concepts. We always need to think about disabilities, but what would be the best practices that we need to keep in mind when we are talking about accessibility in business? Let's think about it. Usually, the 90% of the biggest companies in the world declare themselves as an inclusive companies. But Only 56% of these great companies talk a little bit about disability and at least include just a couple of points in the agenda when they planning new products, and only 4% of the multinational companies, the biggest companies in the world, are really including accessibility as part of the agenda and also including accessibility in their products. 4%, one digit number, 4%. That's crazy, right? So, also, there are a couple of important topics in business that we usually notice. We notice the most all these tropes in movies, in TV shows, or in different type of fiction characters. And let's talk a little bit about the same in business. Victim, victim. We have some companies or leaders that said, "Oh, for the people with disabilities, I will take the money of my company and I will sponsor many I don't know communities with disabilities." And yes, that is good if the intentions will be that. But some important business institutions decide to invest money because they want social recognition instead of being really care about accessibility and about disability. Then we have the V-lane, and it is really common when we are just hiring new people in our teams, and usually we relate this to mental illness, and we can talk about the autism and the spectrum of the autism, and usually think, no, 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 I don't want to hire people with mental illness because in one time they can explode. I cannot deal with this. We can just mark these persons as a villains, and it's not good. And sometimes we have some bias when we are hiring people, and most of people that is suffering mental illness just hide this information to get a better job. Then we have this one, inspiration people, or people with disabilities that really have knowledge in their area and they are advocates. But what is happening? What is the counterpart in here? Most of the companies hire people with disabilities because their knowledge and they know many things, but the roles and responsibilities that they assign are sometimes like a joke. They are just look allocating people in projects where the responsibilities are not important or are minimum or require minimum tasks when they are able to create many things. And some of the companies take advantage of their experience in the disability community and pay less using this type of technique. And I guess the worst is the hero view. When we are talking about heroes, usually we talk about people without disabilities. Sometimes I heard people that says, "Oh, thanks God, I don't have any disability because I can create the sites more accessible, the applications more accessible." And that's great because actually we can just take decisions, just providing support people with disabilities. But we are not heroes. It's our responsibility to create projects that are accessible, applications that are accessible, digital products that are accessible. Now, the technologies is going really fast, but the accessibility is not. We have new technology here and accessibility right here, just behind. And our responsibility is to integrate new technologies with accessibility and create better opportunities for people with disabilities. So that's why it's really important to understand this. Okay, so let's watch a really small video and think about every word in here.
Everyone should have a passion.
I love fashion. I like to dress nice.
I love books. I love sewing.
What I'm passionate about is
that everything should work for everybody?
I'm currently working as a mathematics teacher in a school for the blind.
I was a social worker years ago, and because of my hearing loss, I could not do my job anymore, and I left my job.
I have no body, and I use system top, and I am access all the features.
The advancement of technology has really been helpful to me. Now I use my phone for going online almost exclusively.
If there wasn't accessibility, I wouldn't be here. I'm using my phone to read what you're saying. I have an app.
In my hand, I can hold a device that keeps me connected to the world. And the only question is, how do I access it? Everyone else is looking at their smart devices, and I have to listen to it.
Week 5,000 good minimum. I need a consistent environment. I don't need something that's cute. I'm not here for cute. I'm here for efficiency. The machine is making things easier for me. If it makes things harder, it goes in the bay.
There should be something for someone like me where I could have an insight of what's trending and get to know what goes with my body type, what goes with my skin color.
Each of us have our own needs. We're all on a spectrum. And on that spectrum, all we need are the right tools to be able to gain access to what we need.
All of this technology has been absolutely life-changing for me and for people with hearing loss.
Accessibility, to me, is like the air. It has to be there all the time.
I really would love to read your comments after this video. And Sheila rocks. She said, I don't want something cute. I want something that is functional, that is efficient, right? So definitely as a leader, as a developers, we need to think about it. Accessibility, it's a great opportunity to create opportunities for inclusion. It's a human right. We can create more accessible products for the different type of disabilities that we have around the world, and that is important. So let's continue with something important. Let's talk about the cost of inequality. When we are not collaborating to create better inclusive environments, better inclusive products, better digital and accessibility products, we are just causing an increase in this gap of technology and people with disabilities. Actually, we need to understand that if we are able to create more accessible sites, more accessible digital products, and incorporate the best practices in our code, in our designs, we can definitely just promote better job opportunities. We can just collaborate and allow people to have an education, to have an independence living, because we are participating and creating an inclusive economy. So let's talk about some regulations. That is really important to mention. We've been talking about many concepts about accessibility, but what about the regulations? There are three types or important concepts that we need to understand when we are talking about regulations. We need to understand the civil rights, the procurement laws, and the industry-specific laws. And what is the meaning of that? We need to understand that accessibility is aligned to the laws per each country. And there is a civil right always in each country that requires that everything that we create needs to be accessible. And it could be a website, it could be a physical environment, it could be a digital product or service. And then we have the procurement laws, which is more aligned with services. Okay, we can just try to understand what is the service about and make it more accessible. And then we have the industry specific laws, and we can talk about flight companies or airplane companies. So in this case, there is a specific regulation to validate the websites. Also, we need to integrate different type of legislation, like universal legislations. And we need to understand the governance model. And talking about specifically about the United States, we need to think about this specific configuration of information. And about the international level, we need to understand about the web content accessibility guidelines. Those regulations are really important and are mandatory to meet when we are creating content. Then, depending of the content, we need just to integrate a little bit more regulation, like for example, Section 508, which is really important in terms of public services, for example. Then we have state levels or regulations. For example, in the California state, we have the CCPA regulation, which is mandatory to meet in terms just to conform, to just be compliant with accessibility. And now, of course, we have company level regulations where we need to follow in order to create better and great accessible and digital products. So based on the web content accessibility guidelines, I really would like to provide you like a high level of this guideline in particular. This guideline is organized in four main principles: perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. When we are talking about perceivable, we are talking about the visual presentation of the page, the use of color, the interaction with different devices, with different screens, and also how can we perceive the information. Is it clear? Is not clear? What is happening right now with the information? Then we have the operable, and in this case, we are talking about the components and how functional are there with additional support, like for example only navigating using keyboard or the specific accessibility switches that we can use, like for example braille displayed keywords that we can connect with our computer and just read the information using braille. And then we have understandable, and this is about the code and also the actions of the code in my like digital product. For example, we can talk about error messaging, and when it's announced for people with disabilities, specifically the ones that navigates our pages using assistive technology of screen readers, and also visual notifications about messages, about errors, about warnings. That is important. And finally, we have the robust, that is more related with the code. What is my structure? What are the best practices that I'm applying in the code, right? Now, that is important to understand something that is related to the levels of conformance. And in this case, we need to talk about the double A. That's the industry requirement right now for all digital products that we need to create. It's important just to understand that level A together with the double A is just a package, right? But when we are talking about level A, we are just assuming that we are including level A. But with the double A, we are covering most of the, more of the most common disability scenarios that we have in the market right now, and also as part of the internet behavior. Okay, so when we are talking about this number, we are talking about 1.6 billion people with disabilities in the internet. It's similar to just many countries. Maybe I know in Costa Rica we only are 5 million, 6 million persons. We are not so much. Our country is really small, but definitely when we are talking about disabilities, and if we just ignore this number, it's like being ignored China. So think about that. If we are not including best practices about accessibility, we can just ignore an entire country like China, for example. And that is important. So before to just finish my presentation today, I want to give you some of strategies that we can incorporate in our designs or with our projects. And this is most related with design, because design is really important even before coding and also testing, because we with these design methodologies we can provide better and improved results for user experience. Let's talk about four types of design methodologies that I would like to share with you: inclusive design, human-centered design, universal design, and product design. All of them look similar, but they are different, okay? In a good way, in terms of accessibility. And let's talk about some magic words. In the terms of inclusive design, consistency is the key. Usually, when I run some edits in some different pages, I notice that the consistency is really bad. Like the components are not the same, the navigation with keyboard is not the same in different components, but we are in the same client page, right? So that's why keeping the same use of colors, the patterns of navigation is really important. So consistency, don't forget that. For universal designs, tolerance to error. And this is critical because people with disabilities usually need to access the content of the pages using sometimes additional assistive technology. It could be just digital software like assistive technology, or it could be something like headbands, just having like a specific um, um, cursor, right, or just a stick that we can use our head to just navigate the content in my page. And sometimes I can cause some errors with my navigation. So it's important just to create my content in a way that we can prevent our users to errors, and try to think always in advance about this. Okay, that's really important. Then we have human-centered design, and the word and the magic word here is empathy. We need to think about environments. What is my mental model? What is my desire to access that page? And sometimes this is difficult. I know to think about uh, in advance about different situations from the client is difficult. I know that. But if we have think about empathy all the time when we are creating flows, when we are creating specific actions in our sites, that would be really helpful. And sometimes, because we are the experts or we have the knowledge, we create everything based on our knowledge, right? But sometimes we need just to just put our mind just like that and try to think different and try to incorporate different perspectives of how can we people navigate the web. And finally, about product design, and we need to think about future. We need to think about technology. As I mentioned, technology is going really fast, but accessibility is a little bit back, right? So if we can incorporate the two dimensions, accessibility and new technologies, we can definitely create products that can be accessible in the future. It will be easy just to incorporate with the new technologies and incorporate accessibility. Please think about that. That is really great to incorporate in our sites. And finally, just to finish my presentation, think about everything that we discussed today and try to reshape your bias. What do you think about disability? It's important and will impact your development, your code, your leadership. And try to start learning how to unlearn things and just say, okay, I just didn't think about that. Let me think again and just incorporate this in my design. And of course, develop with the accessibility in mind all the time, because that will be great. And you can involve and provide support for many users around the world. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that awesome presentation. I really love, you shared such a powerful story at the beginning, and I really love the term inclusive economy. We did have one question pop up while you were speaking, which was, how do we create more belonging communities in digital world when it comes to accessibility?
Well, I can have a couple of answers, but I'm not pretty sure if this specific question is between the people with disabilities and our business. I'm not pretty sure if that's the case, but definitely we have really great opportunities. In my experience working with some communities with disabilities, they are eager to just have conversations about disabilities. They want to us get involved with them to know their struggles, what they can just navigate the web, and they are eager to learn how to participate in a society that usually is not accessible. So I really invite you to just go to the communities with disabilities in your neighborhood or in your community and try to just make a connection and networking and start learning because it's important. And I guess one of the most important things that I can just share with my experience, if you learn how to communicate with them and understand their language, it would be really easy for you to create and understand different perspectives. I learned how to sign, how to just say my name in sign language because it's really important and I completely understand what is my struggle when I try to read the information. Or for example, I learned how to read Braille because sometimes we are just coding with so many words and sometimes the Braille display is not reading the information properly and I able to understand that. So that's my advice.
That's really great advice. We did have some requests for the links to the videos that you shared, all really great and very powerful videos. Or are you going to share your slides somewhere that those will be accessible to our audience?
Okay, I can definitely coordinate with you because I need to create also the PowerPoint accessible so people with disabilities that navigates the PDF files, the PowerPoint with assistive technology, I want they can access also the content. So I need to prepare that. But as soon as I finish, I can definitely share the information with you so you can just share as you need.
That'd be great. Yeah, we can help with that.
Thank you.
Shannon just asked, I have recently been involved in making an app more accessible. I found many of the guidelines, like ADA, are more guidelines and not objectively measurable. Do you have any resources for product owners writing development tasks for accessibility or QA tests?
Yes, that's really great question because actually we are always focusing in websites and we just left out a little bit the applications. Sounds like a DJ. So we need to, I really recommend to go and check the material.io from Android. So you can go there and look for the accessibility best practices they are including for Android applications. And also you can go to the Apple Designer page and look for the accessibility input and you will find a specific I don't know, like wiki including accessibility best practices also in code in different programming languages, so you can have that information available. And then there are a couple of other information that you can keep in mind when you are coding applications. And there are a couple of applications for testing. Okay, I will start over. There are a couple of tools that we can use for testing applications, and they are available in the Android platforms. So you can have some open source like the Android Accessibility Scanner tool. You can install this in your phone in Android specifically, and you can run an automated tool and just validate, for example, the content presentation of the visual presentation of the page, color contrast, and also some elements of the specific screen that you are testing on. And there are a couple of automated tools that we can create the scripts and run against the code in Android that is completely free. So you can just investigate a little bit more. And if you want, I can also include this additional slide, including all those links, so you can have the reference as well. Awesome. Yeah.
Really great answer. Really complete answer. We also have several videos online, Shannon, that we've had several presentations on mobile accessibility
Awesome.
with Women Who Code, if you want to check those out as well. Do we have any more questions as we wrap up this session? Just getting positive reviews back for your really great session.
Thank you. I'm super blushed right now. Can you see me? I'm super blushed right now.
It was fantastic. So with that, I recommend we have one more session left before we wrap up for our Connect Reimagine. So I encourage everyone to go check out one of the last 3 sessions of the day. And Merary, thank you so much for being with us here and sharing such personal stories and such powerful stories.
Thank you very much for your invite and also for accepting me today. I'm really glad to be here, and I hope to just connect with many people. I'm going to the networking section, so if you can join just for a while and just meet, just go there. Thank you very much, Sarah.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.